I never thought I'd be one of those people spilling their life online, especially about something as messy as this. But here I am, sharing it because I honestly don't want anyone else to end up like I did. The name's Ben. I'm 35 and I've been married to Sophia for a decade. 10 years. A whole decade with this woman I first met in college. Looking back, it feels like another lifetime. Back then, Sophia was something else entirely. She had this magnetic energy, like she could walk into a room and it would light up just because she was there. People were drawn to her instantly. And me? I was just the guy lucky enough to stand beside her, grinning like a fool, barely able to believe someone like her would even acknowledge me. Everything seemed perfect, or at least that's how our friends saw us. We were the ideal couple, the ones people envied. Hell, I even bought into that for a long time. We had what I thought was a strong marriage, laughing together, enjoying crazy nights out and quiet evenings at home. That's how things were supposed to be, right? But over time, you start building a life together, falling into routines, and you figure you'll make it work because, well, you've made it this far. But damn, I should have seen the warning signs before everything blew up. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic shift. It was a slow, quiet change, and I missed it. Now that I think back, I can see all the little signs I chose to ignore. Those small, uncomfortable moments when something didn't feel quite right, but I convinced myself it was nothing. A part of me didn't want to admit it. 10 years together isn't something you just throw away, right? The first thing that fell off was her work schedule. Sophia had always worked long hours, but lately, she was coming home later and later. At first, I didn't think much of it. I'd ask her about it, and she'd give me the same old excuses. Oh, just another late meeting. Or Ethan and I are working on a project, it's running late. Ethan, that name. I can't even think about it without wanting to smash something. But back then, I didn't think it meant anything. He was just a colleague, right? At first, I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? But the late nights kept happening, sometimes past midnight. And when she did come home, she was different, distant, like her mind was elsewhere, like I wasn't even in the room with her. We barely spoke. And when we did, it was always the same boring, surface-level stuff. How was your day? That's it. Nothing real. As for intimacy, that was nearly non-existent. It felt like we were roommates, not a married couple. We shared the same bed, but there was this invisible wall between us, and I couldn't figure out why. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe work was just wearing her out. Maybe I wasn't doing enough to keep her happy. You can go crazy thinking about all the maybes. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't want to face it. And then came the day that everything came crashing down. It was just another average afternoon. Nothing special. I was working from home, trying to clean up some files on our shared laptop, the one we both use for work. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I wasn't even thinking about it. But while going through some folders, I found an email. The subject line seemed harmless, just some work-related nonsense. But for some reason, I clicked on it. And that was the moment my world shifted. The email was from Ethan, her colleague, but it wasn't about work. Not at all. The contents were explicit, graphic really. Romantic? Sure, but it was mostly sexual. The kind of stuff you don't send to someone unless you're sleeping with them. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He wasn't just a colleague, he was the guy. My wife had been cheating on me. The worst part? She didn't even try to hide it. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen for what felt like hours. My mind was racing, my heart pounding. Rage burned inside me. But there was something darker, something colder. I wanted to make her feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to hurt, but I couldn't just blow up. Not yet. If I was going to confront her, I needed to know more. I needed to understand how long this had been going on, how deep it ran. I couldn't just walk up to her with one email and a bunch of anger. So I did what any guy would do when suspicion gnaws at you and betrayal cuts deep. I started collecting evidence. I wanted to see it all. Every call, every text, every message, every damn secret. I needed to know the full story, not just walk into a confrontation that she could talk her way out of. So I set up spyware on her phone and email. I'm not proud of it, but at that point I didn't care. The trust was shattered. If she was going to betray me, I was going to know every last detail. The program showed me everything. Texts, emails, phone calls. I could even listen in on her conversations if I wanted to. It was like watching a slow-motion crash that I couldn't stop. That was my marriage, a disaster unfolding right before my eyes. And from that day on, I was living a double life. I kept acting like everything was normal, smiling, laughing, pretending nothing was wrong while I secretly monitored the spyware. Every chance I got, I'd check, watching in real time as she texted Ethan, planning their next meeting. I saw the flirty messages, the sexual emojis, the innuendos. It felt like I was watching her fall in love with someone else right in front of me, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. The worst part? I had to keep pretending I didn't know. I'd sit there across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about her long, hard day at work, all the while knowing that every word that left her mouth was a lie. It was like a knife twisting in my gut, but I wasn't ready to blow it all up yet. This was only the beginning. I wasn't sharing this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I know there are guys out there, just like me, sitting clueless on their couch while their wives are out there screwing someone else. Trust me, I didn't think it could happen to me either, but it did. And if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Once I started keeping track of Sophia's phone, it didn't take long for the truth to come spilling out. This wasn't some one-time mistake or a casual fling. No, this was a full-blown affair, and it had been going on for over a year. A year? Can you even imagine that? 12 months of lies, deception, and betrayal, all right under my nose. And the worst part? They were damn good at covering their tracks. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. They had a system, an operation running like a well-oiled machine of secrecy. Through the spyware, I learned they'd been meeting in hotels during business trips and conferences. Sometimes they'd even fly to different cities just to be together. And just to make everything worse, they had a separate bank account to fund their little escapades. I watched as they booked flights, hotel rooms, expensive dinners, things Sophia had never once mentioned to me. Not a word. The pain of discovering all of this was something I can't even put into words. It was like someone took a knife, shoved it into my gut, and twisted it over and over again. And the fact that this had been going on for so long, that was the real gut punch. I felt like an absolute fool for not noticing sooner. But as much as I wanted to explode, as much as I wanted to confront her and tear her world apart, I couldn't. Not yet. We had 2 daughters, Olivia and Charlotte. They didn't deserve to be dragged into this mess. I had to play it smart. I needed time to figure out what to do next. Every time I looked at Sophia after that, all I could see was her betrayal. She tried to act normal, pretend nothing was wrong, but I could see right through her. The guilt was practically dripping off her. And then it all made sense. She had been so cold and distant because she was hiding something, and it wasn't just work. Every excuse she gave me, I'm just stressed from work, or I'm so exhausted, was all bullshit. She wasn't stressed from work. She was stressed because she was living a double life, trying to juggle everything without getting caught. And it became clear, Ethan wasn't just some fling. He was her way of filling a void that I wasn't enough to fill. That hit me harder than the affair itself. I wasn't just being replaced physically, I was being replaced emotionally too. I wasn't enough anymore. It felt like everything we built together wasn't enough for her. She may have tried to act loving at home, but I could see it. I could see the cracks, the guilt weighing her down, but she was too far gone to turn back. But even with all that, I still wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I wanted to be calculated. I needed to be sure that when the time came, I had all the power. No decisions. No heated arguments where she could twist things around and make me look like the bad guy. No. I wanted to make sure when I struck, it would be final. In the meantime, I kept up the act. I played the oblivious husband for the kids' sake. I helped Olivia with her homework, took Charlotte to soccer practice, did all the fatherly things I'd always done. I couldn't let them see the cracks in our marriage, not yet. They were too young to understand the storm that was coming. And I wasn't about to let Sophia's actions tear apart their world. Not until I was ready to make my move. But with every passing day, it got harder to keep up the charade. Every time I saw Sophia on her phone, I knew who she was texting. Every time she worked late or went out with friends, I knew where she really was. And it killed me. I'd lie in bed next to her, knowing she had just come back from sleeping with another man, and I'd have to pretend like everything was fine. It wasn't just the anger that ate me up, it was the betrayal on every level. I had trusted her with everything, my heart, my life, our children. And in return, She was giving herself to someone else. I could have confronted her right then and there, thrown it all in her face. But I didn't. I stayed silent. I needed more time. I had to be meticulous with my revenge. So, I waited, observed, and carefully bided my time. Every move Sophia made, I was there, always 2 steps ahead of her, gathering more evidence, watching her dig herself deeper, oblivious to what was coming. She wasn't going to walk away from this without facing the consequences. When the time came, I'd make her pay for every lie, every secret, and every betrayal. Once I decided to play the long game, I knew I couldn't let anything slip. Sophia had to believe she was still the one in control, that I had no clue what she was up to. So, I kept up the act, the loving, doting husband who had no idea his wife was lying to his face. It wasn't easy, but I had to make it believable. I gave her the space she wanted, pretended her late nights didn't bother me. I even started initiating conversations about her work, asking about meetings, about how things were going. Every time she looked me in the eye and lied, I smiled and nodded. But inside, it felt like I was feeding a fire that was burning me alive. Still, I wasn't just sitting back, letting her think she was getting away with it. Behind the scenes, I was taking action. I started slowly siphoning money into a private account. Nothing too noticeable, just small transfers here and there. I wasn't about to be left in the dust when everything came crashing down. I knew I'd need a financial cushion once I pulled the trigger on the divorce. While she thought she was living her life without a care, I was collecting evidence. Every single text, every call, every damn detail about her affair with Ethan. I kept everything, screenshots, emails, even photos. I wasn't going to let her deny it when the time came. She wouldn't be able to spin the story or manipulate her way out of it. I had the proof, and I was going to use it. One of the smartest things I did was hire a divorce lawyer early on. I spoke with him in secret, told him everything, and he laid out a strategy. It wasn't just about getting out of the marriage. It was about protecting myself. He helped me build a plan, one that took timing into account. We agreed to wait until the case was solid, airtight, before I hit her with the divorce papers, completely blindsiding her. But here's where things got interesting. I knew Ethan had a wife, Megan. I'd seen her at school events, PTA meetings, the usual places. She seemed nice enough but distant. Who could blame her? She was married to a man like Ethan. I knew she deserved to know what was going on, but I wasn't going to just drop a bomb on her without preparation. I had to be strategic. I needed her on my side. So, I started setting up playdates for our kids, Olivia and Charlotte, with Megan's kids who went to the same school. At first, it was casual. We talked while the kids played, just small talk. I wanted to build rapport, earn her trust. Slowly, I started dropping subtle hints. Things like, Sophia's been working late with Ethan a lot lately. That must be rough, or it's funny how work always pulls people in different directions. Nothing too obvious, just enough to plant a seed of doubt. I could see the wheels turning in her head, even if she didn't say much. It didn't take long before Megan started getting suspicious. You could see it in the way she'd check her phone when Ethan wasn't around or how her smile would fade when I'd bring up work. She was piecing things together, but she still needed that final confirmation. That's when I gave it to her, proof. I showed her just enough of what I'd gathered. Text between Sophia and Ethan, a few suggestive messages, plans for hotel rooms. I didn't overwhelm her, but it was enough to confirm her worst fears. I'll never forget the look on her face when she saw it. The color drained from her face, and I could see the heartbreak hit her all at once. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at the screen, her hands shaking. Something was off, she whispered, but I didn't want to believe it. I could feel for her. I really could. I knew exactly what she was going through. Hell, I was living it. But there was a part of me that was cold, calculating. I needed her on my side for what was coming next. Megan was going to be my secret weapon. Together, we were going to make sure Sophia and Ethan paid for everything. I wasn't aiming for a clean break, no. That would have been too easy. I wanted them to feel the full weight of their betrayal, to suffer the way I had. Exposing them, showing the world exactly who they were. That was the real goal. Months of preparation had led to this. Megan and I had carefully planned every move, every conversation, every detail. We knew exactly what we were doing. Sophia and Ethan thought they were safe, that their affair was still hidden. But we were about to drag it into the light, and once it was out there, there would be no going back for either of them. It all came to a head on our anniversary. 10 years of marriage. 10 years I thought were meaningful, but now all of it felt like it had been flushed down the drain. And Sophia didn't even see it coming. I suggested we take a romantic weekend getaway, a chance for us to reconnect, to try and rekindle what we once had. I laid it on thick, flowers, a sweet note, everything she'd expect to hear. I could see the guilt in her eyes the second I brought it up. She hesitated for just a moment, probably figuring out how to juggle me and Ethan that weekend, but in the end, she agreed. How could she say no to a husband who was so eager to rekindle the flame? Meanwhile, Megan was making her own moves on her end. She arranged for Ethan to go on a business trip, something Sophia was used to, but that no one would question. It was almost too perfect. Ethan wouldn't have a clue. We chose a hotel not far from where Sophia and Ethan had been sneaking around. A place they'd be comfortable meeting up at, just like they had so many times before. The stage was set. The night of the trip, everything clicked into place. Sophia and I checked into the hotel, but I wasn't planning on spending a single minute there with her. Megan and I had kept tabs on Ethan and Sophia, so we knew exactly where they were headed. I made up some excuse to Sophia about needing to take a work call and slipped out of the room. My heart was pounding, but my mind was sharp. This was it. Megan was already waiting for me in the lobby when I arrived. We exchanged a silent nod, both of us aware of what was about to go down. We made our way to the room where Ethan and Sophia were supposed to meet. My adrenaline was surging. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger. Months of holding this in, pretending everything was fine while they lied and betrayed me. It all built up to this moment. Then we saw them. Sophia and Ethan arrived separately, just like they always did. First Ethan, then Sophia, slipping into the hotel room like it was their own private hideout. They had no idea what was coming. Megan and I gave them a few minutes to settle in, just long enough for them to drop their guard and feel comfortable. Then, without warning, we burst into the room. The look on their faces was priceless. Sophia's eyes went wide, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the words. Ethan froze, completely stunned, not knowing what to do. They didn't even have time to cover up, to make up some excuse. It was a perfect snapshot of their pathetic secret life. Sophia's panic was obvious. Her face drained of color as she realized what was happening. But it was too late. I made sure the camera was capturing every moment, but I kept my voice cold, detached as I spoke. Surprise. I've known for a long time, Sophia. I've known everything. She tried to stammer out some kind of excuse, but I wasn't listening. The time for lies was over. Her face went pale, her hands trembling. She couldn't even look me in the eye. And that's when I knew I had her. The game was over. She was trapped, and she knew it. There was no wriggling her way out of this. Megan stood there silently, her expression as cold as mine. Ethan, on the other hand, looked like a deer caught in headlights, his face a mask of disbelief. I honestly think he was more worried about what Megan would do than the fact that I was standing there, recording the whole thing. I made sure to get it all on tape. Every word, every reaction, every moment of their humiliation. Sophia could barely speak, and when she tried to open her mouth to explain herself, I cut her off with a sharp wave of my hand. Save it, I said, my voice colder than it had ever been. You don't get to explain anything. A strange calm washed over me. All the anger, pain, and betrayal from the months leading up to this moment. It all came together. And now that I was finally here, now that I had exposed them for what they were, I felt detached, almost numb. It was like I was watching someone else's life unravel before me. There were no screams, no yelling, just the cold, hard truth of what they had done, laid bare for all of us to see. Sophia stood frozen, unable to move, while Ethan fumbled for words, trying desperately to salvage something, anything. But there was nothing they could do. Nothing they could say would change what had already happened. Megan and I walked out of that room without another word. We didn't need to stay and watch them scramble for excuses or beg for forgiveness. We had what we came for, proof. There was no denying it anymore. The truth was out, and they couldn't hide from it. As we left the hotel, I knew this was just the beginning. The divorce was coming next, and with the evidence I had, Sophia didn't stand a chance. But as I walked away from that hotel room, I felt like I had already won. After everything, the lies, the deceit, the months of pretending, I knew it wouldn't be long before Sophia came crawling back, begging me to salvage whatever was left of our shattered lives. Sure enough, a few days later, she showed up at my door, eyes swollen from crying, pleading for forgiveness. "Ben, please," she sobbed, standing there in the kitchen, the place where we used to sit together and talk about everything. Now, it felt like a battlefield, a place where the remnants of our marriage had been torn apart. It was a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight. I still love you. We can fix this. Her words felt like empty echoes. A mistake? A year of lies, secret trips, hidden hotel rooms, a secret bank account. That wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal, planned and executed over months. And as for love, whatever we had was obliterated the moment she chose someone else over me. I looked at her, the coldness inside me growing. "You didn't make a mistake, Sophia. You made a choice. Every time you met with him, every lie you told, it was your choice. You didn't love me then, and I doubt you love me now." Her face crumpled, and I could see the guilt and fear there. But I didn't feel anything. I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way back into my life, not with her apologies and crocodile tears. This wasn't about forgiveness. This was about closure. This was about making her face the consequences of her actions. I pulled out the divorce papers I'd been holding onto for days. The shock on her face when I handed them to her, disbelief, horror. Those emotions flashed across her features as she took them from me. I spoke calmly, firmly. "Sign them. It's over." She stared at the papers, her hands trembling, her voice pleading. "Ben, please don't do this. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do anything. Just don't give up on us." I shook my head, disgusted. "There's nothing to fix. You destroyed our marriage, and I'm not interested in trying to bring something back from the dead." She didn't argue anymore. She stood there, clutching the papers like they were her last hope. But I could see the desperation in her eyes, the realization that she had lost everything. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving her to stand there in the wreckage she had created. The fallout was fast and inevitable. Megan didn't waste a second. She filed for divorce from Ethan the next day. The scandal spread like wildfire through our circle, and soon everyone knew what had happened. Ethan lost his job. Sleeping with a colleague's wife doesn't exactly help with corporate standing. As for Sophia, her reputation was in shambles. Friends she once thought she could count on turned their backs on her. The whispers followed her wherever she went. It was almost poetic in a way. For months, I had been the one humiliated and betrayed. Now, Sophia and Ethan were the ones drowning in public shame. Their secret had been exposed, and there was no escaping the fallout. But what truly mattered to me wasn't the gossip or their ruined reputations. It was Olivia and Charlotte. I wasn't going to let Sophia drag them into her mess. I had gathered more than enough evidence to ensure I would get full custody. When it came time for the court hearing, the judge didn't even hesitate. He awarded me full custody, citing Sophia's infidelity and lack of stability. Watching Sophia as the judge read the decision, that moment is etched in my mind forever. She looked devastated, like she was losing everything. In a way, she had lost me, lost her standing in the community, and now she had lost her kids. But that was no longer my problem. I had fought for this, and I had won. Now it was time to move on. The divorce settlement went exactly as planned. I kept the house, the one where Olivia and Charlotte had spent their childhood, the one that still held the echoes of a family before everything fell apart. I walked away with primary custody, ensuring my girls stayed with me, away from the chaos Sophia had created. She was left with nothing, just a small apartment and visitation rights. Everything she thought she would keep, she lost. It wasn't about the house or the money. It was about the fact that she had thrown away her family for nothing. For a brief affair that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, setting the stage, making sure everything would fall in my favor. And it had. Financially, I was secure, but emotionally, I had come out on top. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I rebuilt my life from the ground up. Every calculated move, every piece of evidence, every step I took had led to this moment. I wasn't left picking up the pieces. Sophia, on the other hand, she was ostracized, isolated, left to face the consequences of her own actions. Ethan was out of the picture, his life in ruins. He had been nothing more than a temporary distraction for her, something to fill the void she felt. Now she had to live with that emptiness. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I had no regrets. The pain was real, but it was also the fire that pushed me forward. I focused on my daughters, on being the father they deserved. The time I spent with them became my purpose. Watching them grow, hearing their laughter, knowing they were safe and loved, that became everything to me. It was the redemption I needed, and in the end, it was all that mattered. For the first time in a long time, I began to trust myself again. Sophia's betrayal didn't break me. It forged me into something stronger. I came out of that nightmare with my dignity intact, something Sophia could never claim for herself. She was a shell of the woman I once knew, desperately trying to rebuild a life she had torn apart on her own. Looking back, my revenge wasn't about destroying her. It was about reclaiming what she had tried to take from me, my sense of self, my confidence, my future. By being patient, staying focused, and playing the long game, I didn't just win the divorce. I won back my life. I proved to Sophia that her betrayal wasn't the end of me. It was the start of something better. I'm sharing my story not to boast, but because I want others to know that it is possible to come out stronger. Betrayal feels like it will crush you, but if you stay sharp and don't let the anger consume you, you can rebuild. You can rise again, just like I did. Her downfall wasn't my triumph. She chose it. I merely made sure she couldn't drag me down with her. It's been a year since everything happened, and I figured it was time for an update. So much has changed, and honestly, I never thought I'd be in such a good place after all that went down. If you had told me a year ago that I would emerge from all of this stronger, happier, and more at peace, I probably would have called you crazy. But here I am. I'm doing better than I expected. After everything settled, I decided to put all my focus on rebuilding my life, starting with being the best father I could be to Olivia and Charlotte. They're both doing great, by the way. They've adjusted to the changes much quicker than I thought they would. Staying in the family home helped, and I've made sure they know they're loved, no matter what. Sophia, as you can guess, she's no longer a significant part of our lives. She has her visitation rights, but the relationship with the girls is strained. I don't try to sway them one way or the other. I let them decide for themselves. Right now, they're not all that interested in spending much time with her. I think they're still processing everything. Sophia's been trying to rebuild her life, but from what I've heard, it's not going well. She's still stuck in the fallout from the affair, and it seems like she hasn't made much progress. As for me, I've moved forward. I won't lie. There were days when I felt the weight of everything, days when I wondered if I would ever feel normal again. But time is a way of healing, and slowly, I started putting myself back together. I'm seeing someone now. We've been together for a few months, and it's been good. I won't go into too much detail, but she's been exactly what I needed, a breath of fresh air in my life. There's no drama, no secrets, just honesty and support. Work has been steady, and I've shifted my focus more toward the future. I've been saving up for some trips with the girls. We've already taken one to the beach, and seeing them play in the sand, laughing without a care in the world, was a moment I'll never forget. I want to give them the childhood they deserve, free from the weight of our past. Looking back, I don't regret how things turned out. If anything, I'm grateful. That painful experience forced me to reevaluate what really matters in life. Sophia's betrayal stung, but it didn't define me. It gave me the opportunity to rebuild and to show my daughters that no matter what life throws your way, you can always rise above it. So yeah, I'm doing well. Better than I ever imagined I could a year ago. Thanks to everyone who followed my story and offered support along the way. It meant more than you'll ever know. If you're going through something similar, just remember, it does get better. You just have to keep moving forward.